A bottle is a perfect canvas for a beautiful piece of art, and the bigger the bottle, the better. Today I'm going to use salt wash to lay a textured base on this bottle. I'm just mixing it up on a plate. I'm using the color Hydrangea Kiss, and I pour in my paint first, and then I'm going to sprinkle in my salt wash and incorporate the salt wash and the paint together. You know that we want the salt wash to be a thick consistency, like a thick cake batter, but I don't want it dripping off of my stir stick, so maybe like a thick pound cake batter. Now that I've got my salt wash to the consistency that I want it, I am just going to take an inexpensive chip brush and use that to apply my salt wash. Salt wash is kind of rough on paint brushes, so a chip brush is your best option. When you're done, you can rinse it out if you want, or you can just toss it. I am using the stippling technique to apply the salt wash. I just load up my brush with the salt wash and I stipple it all over my bottle to create this nice chunky texture. I'm going to set my bottle aside and let it dry. When this bottle is painted, it's going to have some mermaid on it. So while my salt wash is drying, I'm going to go ahead and cast my mermaids. I'm going to be using amazing quick cast resin, the kind that sets up in 10 minutes and dries white. I like to use mica powder to color my molds, and so I'm just layering in the colors, and the cool thing is that you can just use all the colors you want and wait until you see how it turns out. When I use mica powder in my molds, I make sure that I get the mica powder all the way up the edges of the mold. I'm using a pretty turquoise color for her tail and her body, some bronze, some gold, just layering all the colors in there, and they just help to so beautifully color the mold. So after I cast it and when I pull it out, that part is complete. Now it's time to mix up the resin. I recently put my resin in these condiment bottles. It makes it so much easier to pour right out of the spout because my resin, I get it in gallon increments because I use a lot of it. So the resin, quick cast resin, comes in a part A and a part B, and you mix equal parts together. I put the part A in first, and then I put an equal amount of the part B. I mix it up for about 30 to 45 seconds. Oh, before I do that, I'm adding a bit of green mica powder. I like to add some color to the resin that I put in the mold because I don't want any awkward white in my mold, so this makes sure that every part of the mold has some color. Okay, so I'm stirring it up about 30-45 seconds, and now I'm ready to pour it into my mold. I want to make sure that my mold is on a nice even surface, so I get an even casting with it, and I just fill up all of the space with the resin. I can use a popsicle stick to spread it out and fill in any areas that need a little more filling and make sure that the mold is evenly dispersed with the resin. Now the fun part, to watch it set up. So the resin takes about 10 to 15 minutes to fully set up before you're ready to pull out your mold. Now let's do the reveal and let's get this mermaid out of her mold and see just how beautiful she is. This is like my favorite part, is getting all that color. So you can see as I'm pulling it out that when it first comes out, it is very pliable. I would have been better to wait to cast my mold until right before I was ready to apply it to my bottle. But I did this while I was waiting for it to dry, so I needed to use a heat gun to soften it up before I applied it. But if I had waited and done this right before, it would have gone on my bottle so much easier. So I recommend not casting your mold. If you're going to use a mold on your bottle, not casting your mold until just before you're ready to put it on. But look how beautiful the mermaid came out and how lovely all that mica powder worked. Now I'm ready to paint my bottle, and I'm going to do a blend. I'm using the color Deep Ocean, I think some more Hydrangea Kiss, and then I'm going to add in a little Marigold. I like to put the paint on in like sections of 3. I'm going to put the Deep Ocean down here at the bottom and my lighter color up at the top, and then I just start pulling the colors together. A little something in the middle there too, lighter color in the middle, or maybe that's peacock feather. And there's my Marigold. Then I just start pulling my colors together. First, I brush vertically, then I pull it together horizontally, then I go back vertically again, and then horizontally until I'm happy with how my colors have blended. Practicing on smaller surfaces like bottles is a great lead into using this blending technique on a piece of furniture. Look how the colors come together. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side so that the entire bottle is painted. Just look at all the beautiful chunky texture that the salt wash created. Now I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper. I'm going to use a 400 grit. And I'm just going to very, very lightly sand my bottle to reveal the color underneath, which was that Hydrangea Kiss, and to smooth out some of the texture on the bottle. Use a light hand when you do this because I don't really want to sand all the way down to the glass. I just want to get a little bit of that top coat layer off so I can see the texture color underneath. You can decide how much or how little of the top coat you want to take off with your sanding. Now I want to give the bottle a little vintage vibe look, and so I am going to put our antique Reef on Junk antique dark glaze on the bottle. I'm just going to spread it all over the bottle with my brush, and then I'm going to wipe it back. And I love how the dark glaze gets into all of the nooks and the crannies of the texture that's on the bottle. So I just spritz the bottle with a little fine mist of water from my fine mist spray bottle and use a paper towel and wipe it back as much or as little as I want. And I love how it gives the bottle an aged vintage look, and it's going to be the perfect background for the mermaid. All right, now it's time to attach the mermaid. Now remember I said it would have been better if I had waited to cast this mold just before I was ready to place her on the bottle because she would have been so much more pliable. But it did set up, the resin sets up hard like a hard plastic, so taking my heat gun and heating her up so that she will be a little more pliable. And even then I still had a little bit of a struggle getting her on the bottle how I wanted to, and I had to use a lot of painter's tape to get her down there. And then in the end, even my thick and quick glue that I love to use wasn't strong enough, so there are some parts that just didn't adhere like I wanted it to, and in the very end I did go back with a little super glue just to make sure she got on that bottle just how I wanted it. Okay, so now my mermaid is on there and I love it, but I have a little empty space above and below her, and so I like to fill that in. And I thought the rose chintz iron orchid design inlay, a piece of that would be really beautiful on this bottle because it is a whole vintagey mermaid vibe going on here. So I took a little piece of it, just cut it out, and first thing I do after I cut it out is I apply some gunk to the portion of the bottle where I want to apply the inlay, and then I just put my inlay into the gunk. I make sure it has really good adhesion by pressing over it with my hands and rubbing over it with a paper towel. Then after I've got it firmly attached to the bottle, I will spritz it with my fine mist spray bottle and then just let that dry for about 30 to 45 minutes while the paint that is embedded in the inlay will transfer itself onto the surface of the bottle. It's so easy and the results are so satisfying. Wait and you'll see. I've got this top part of the bottle. What do I want to put there? Well, I had this little floral garland that I thought would look cute, so I hot glued some on to the top, and I love how that looks as well. Now we're making some progress. I just have one more little empty space here that I think I'm going to fill in with some iron orchid design molds from my seashell molds, a few starfish. There's some different size starfish, and I think they'll be perfect in this space. So I cast those with some amazing cast resin, and then I just glued them in place. But first I put down a little fishnet because I just love to embellish my bottles with little fishnet. Gives that little extra texture and it just kind of finishes the look. I use my hot glue gun to apply this, and then I attach the starfish to the netting. Right, we're almost done. Now it's time to remove the inlay. Once the inlay is dry, all you do is spritz it with your water or go over it with a wet paper towel and allow the water to soak into the inlay to make it wet. When you do this, you're going to be able to get it off in one piece, and then you can reuse that inlay to up to 2 more times, maybe 3. Each time the paint will be a little less than the time before, but you're going to be able to reuse it. So put it somewhere to dry, and oh my goodness, look how beautiful that inlay is on the bottom of this bottle, and it's just perfect. I love it. A little bit of floral in the top, and look at my beautiful mermaid bottle. You see how a big bottle is the perfect canvas for some unique mermaid art. So grab a bottle today and create something fun.